last generation. How AI will change everything about being human. Right now, as you listen to this, somewhere in a fluorescent-lit office building in the middle of an American city, a person is doing something remarkable. They are sitting at a desk. They are opening their laptops. They are logging into their email. And they are receiving a message from their employer that their position has been eliminated, effective immediately, replaced by a piece of software that didn't exist 14 months ago. This isn't a dramatic scene from a movie. It isn't a dystopian thought experiment. It is Tuesday. It is happening right now, today, in offices across the world, in numbers that would have seemed impossible even 2 years ago. In 2025 alone, over 130,000 technology workers lost their jobs across more than 470 companies. That works out to roughly 574 human beings, every single day, walking out of an office for the last time. Their roles handed over to systems that never sleep, never take lunch, never ask for a raise, and never, ever get tired. But here is the fact that should stop you cold. The number that makes this story different from every other wave of technological change in human history. The CEO of Microsoft's Artificial Intelligence division recently predicted that all professional work performed sitting at a computer, every last task, will be fully automated within 18 months, not 18 years, not a generation from now, 18 months. Accounting, legal work, marketing, project management, all of it. And he is not some fringe commentator shouting into the wind. He runs one of the most powerful AI organizations on the planet. Now, you might hear that and think it is just Silicon Valley hype. That executives love to exaggerate. Those predictions about technology replacing workers have been wrong before. And you would be partially right, because humans have cried wolf about automation for centuries. The Luddites smashed weaving looms in the 1810s, convinced that machines would make all workers obsolete. The introduction of the automobile was supposed to leave entire economies in ruins. Computers were going to empty every office. And yet, after each disruption, the economy adapted. New industries emerged. New types of work were created. The old jobs vanished, and new ones took their place, often better ones, often safer ones, often more interesting ones. But the people who study this question most carefully, the economists and the computer scientists and the AI researchers themselves, are saying something different this time. They are saying that this time, the pattern might break, because this time, the machines are not replacing our muscles. They are replacing our minds. And so tonight, we are going to take a journey. Not into the stars, not into the quantum realm, not into the distant past. We are going to travel into the very near future. A future that is hurtling toward us faster than most of us realize. We are going to look at where artificial intelligence stands right now, at this moment, in early 2026. We are going to trace the path it is on, and we are going to follow that path forward 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, into a world that may be unrecognizable from the one we inhabit today. Imagine for a moment that you could fall asleep tonight and wake up in 2036. Just 10 years from now. What would you see? If the predictions of the people building this technology are even partially correct, you would wake up in a world where most of the code running your phone was written by AI, where the car that takes you to work drives itself, Or your doctor's most important diagnostic tool is a machine that has read every medical paper ever written. Or your child's tutor is a software program that knows exactly how they learn best. Or the package on your doorstep was loaded, sorted, driven, and delivered without a single human hand touching it. Where robots walk upright through warehouses, and perhaps through the hallways of nursing homes and the aisles of grocery stores. This is not the far future. This is the near future. And the foundations for every single one of those developments are being laid right now. We will watch as intelligent software agents replace entire departments. We will stand in factories where humanoid robots walk upright and learn new tasks by watching a human do them once. We will enter hospitals where AI diagnoses diseases years before symptoms appear. We will sit in classrooms where every student has a personal tutor that knows exactly what they are struggling with and adapts in real time. We will ride in cars that drive themselves through city streets with no human hand on the wheel. And then, once we have seen all of that, we will confront the question that none of us can avoid for much longer. If machines can do everything we do, what happens to the fundamental bargain that has organized human civilization for thousands of years? The bargain that says you trade your labor for money, and that money allows you to live. What happens when that deal falls apart? Do we find a new arrangement, something like universal basic income, where every person receives enough to live on regardless of whether they work? Or do we go further still, into territory that sounds like pure science fiction, a world where money itself becomes irrelevant, where the sheer productive power of AI and robotics creates such overwhelming abundance that the concept of paying for things simply dissolves? These are not abstract philosophical questions anymore. They are practical policy questions. They are questions that heads of state and corporate boards and ordinary families will have to answer, possibly within the next decade. And the answers we choose will determine what kind of future our children inherit. Think about this for a moment. Your great-grandparents, if they lived a century ago, inhabited a world without television, without commercial air travel, without antibiotics, without nuclear weapons, without the internet. The world they knew was utterly unrecognizable compared to ours. The changes that separated their world from ours unfolded over 100 years. The changes we are about to discuss could unfold within 10 or 20. The compression of time is itself one of the defining features of the AI revolution. Things that used to take generations now take years. Things that used to take years now take months. And the process is accelerating. There is a concept in technology called a singularity, a point beyond which predictions become impossible because the pace of change has exceeded the human capacity to anticipate it. We may not be at a singularity, but we are close enough to feel its gravitational pull. The ground beneath our feet is shifting, and the institutions we have built, our schools, our workplaces, our governments, our economic systems, were designed for a world that is rapidly ceasing to exist. And the truly unsettling part is this: most people have not noticed yet. Most people are going about their daily routines, dropping kids at school, commuting to work, scrolling through their phones, completely unaware that the technological infrastructure of their lives is being quietly, steadily, irrevocably redesigned. By the time the changes become visible to everyone, the window to shape them may have already closed. So settle in. Get comfortable. Because the story of what comes next is one of the most important stories ever told, and we are living right in the middle of its opening chapter, the intelligence explosion, where we stand right now. To understand where artificial intelligence is going, you first need to understand where it is. And to appreciate how fast the ground is shifting, it helps to take a short step backwards and look at the speed of change. In November of 2022, a company called OpenAI released a chatbot called ChatGPT. Within 5 days, it had 1 million users. Within 2 months, it had 100 million. It became the fastest growing application in the history of consumer technology. Faster than Instagram, faster than TikTok, faster than anything that had come before. By mid-Minus 2025, ChatGPT alone was handling more than 2.5 billion prompts per day from approximately 800 million weekly active users around the world. To put that in perspective, that is more daily interactions than the total population of most continents. But ChatGPT was only the beginning. What followed was an arms race among the largest and most powerful technology companies on Earth: Google, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, Apple, and a constellation of ambitious startups like Anthropic and Mistral poured hundreds of billions of dollars into artificial intelligence research, training facilities, and infrastructure. In 2025, the major technology companies collectively spent more than $500 billion on AI-related capital expenditures. That is more than the entire gross domestic product of countries like Sweden or Argentina, and this spending is not speculative. OpenAI's revenue was projected to reach roughly $13 billion in 2025, with expectations of doubling to $30 billion in 2026. These are not small research labs running academic experiments. These are among the wealthiest corporations in human history, and they are all converging on the same conclusion: artificial intelligence is the most important technology that has ever been developed. And whoever builds the most capable systems first will reshape the global order. So what exactly have they built? As of early 2026, the leading AI systems, models from companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, Google DeepMind, and others, can do things that would have seemed like magic just a few years ago. They can write essays, compose music, generate images and video from text descriptions, translate between languages, summarize legal documents, debug computer code, analyze medical scans, design molecules, simulate scientific experiments, carry on extended conversations that feel remarkably human, and reason through complex multi-step problems. The organization METR, which tracks AI capabilities over time, found something remarkable. The length of software engineering tasks that leading AI models could complete was doubling every 7 months between 2019 and 2024. Then, starting in late 2024, that pace accelerated. By mid-Minus 2025, the doubling time had shrunk to 5 months. As of late 2025, frontier AI models could complete coding tasks that would take a skilled human engineer close to 5 hours, and they could do it in minutes. This isn't just about coding. In a survey of more than 1,000 software developers, 72% of those who tried AI coding tools now use them every single day. In 2025, roughly 42% of all code written was AI-generated or AI-assisted. And developers expect that number to climb to 55% in 2026 and 65% by 2027. Think about what that means. Within 2 years, most of the software that runs our world, the applications on your phone, the systems that manage your bank account, the code that controls traffic lights and hospital equipment, will have been substantially written by machines. But the truly transformative development isn't the models themselves. It is the emergence of what the industry calls agents. An agent is an AI system that doesn't just answer questions. It takes action. It browses the web. It fills out forms. It makes purchases. It schedules meetings. It writes and sends emails. It coordinates with other agents. It plans, executes, evaluates, and iterates. Where a chatbot is like a very knowledgeable friend you can ask things. An agent is like an employee that can be given a task and trusted to figure out how to complete it. Forecasters on the prediction platform Economies put a 95% chance on a major company running an AI shopping agent that completes over 100,000 transactions by the end of 2026. Amazon has already begun testing an agent that makes purchases within its platform. OpenAI started allowing users to buy products from sellers directly within ChatGPT. The implications are enormous. If AI agents can reliably handle complex multi-step tasks, browsing, comparing, negotiating, purchasing, reporting, then the need for human intermediaries in vast swathes of the economy drops sharply, not to zero, not immediately, but sharply. And then there is the question that hangs over all of this like a gathering storm cloud. When does AI reach human-level general intelligence? When does it stop being a tool and start being a peer or a superior? The honest answer is that nobody knows for certain. But the estimates keep getting shorter. The forecasting platform Economies, which aggregates predictions from thousands of informed forecasters, currently gives a 25% chance of artificial general intelligence arriving by 2029 and a 50% chance by 2033. The CEO of Anthropic, Dario Amodei, has suggested AGI could arrive as early as 2026. Sam Altman of OpenAI has said 2029. Prominent forecasters associated with the AI 2027 project originally predicted 2027 as the most likely year for transformative AI, though they have since revised their median estimate to around 2030. These are not predictions about some distant future. These are predictions about the next few years. And regardless of the exact date, the trajectory is unmistakable. AI systems are getting more capable at an exponential rate. The cost of that capability is falling, and the range of tasks they can perform is expanding into domains that were, until very recently, considered uniquely and permanently human. Consider the sheer momentum behind this trajectory. The CEOs of OpenAI, Google DeepMind, and Anthropic have all predicted that AGI will arrive within the next 5 years. These are not casual observers. They are the people with the most visibility into the capabilities of next-generation systems and the most detailed knowledge of the technology's current trajectory. You might dismiss their claims as self-serving hype, and a degree of skepticism is healthy. But even accounting for bias, when the people closest to the technology are shortening their estimates by years rather than lengthening them, that tells you something. The trajectory is driven by several converging forces. First, computational power continues to grow. The first gigawatt-scale AI training clusters are beginning operations in 2026, providing vastly more raw computing capacity than anything previously available. Second, algorithmic improvements are making AI models more efficient, getting more capability out of each dollar of computing investment. Third, AI itself is beginning to accelerate AI research. Models are now being used to help design better models, creating a feedback loop that could compress timelines further. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, there has been a breakthrough in what the industry calls reasoning models. Earlier AI systems excelled at pattern recognition and language generation, but struggled with multi-step logical reasoning, planning, and problem-solving. Newer architectures have dramatically improved these capabilities, allowing AI systems to decompose complex problems, consider multiple approaches, evaluate their own reasoning, and arrive at solutions through something that increasingly resembles genuine thought. Whether this constitutes true understanding or merely a more sophisticated form of pattern matching is a philosophical debate that may never be fully resolved. But from a practical standpoint, the distinction is becoming less relevant. If a system can reliably solve the same problems a human expert can solve, the question of whether it truly understands is secondary to the question of what it can do. The Stanford Human-Centered AI Institute captured the mood in its 2026 outlook when it noted that after years of fast expansion and billion-dollar bets, 2026 may mark the moment artificial intelligence confronts its actual utility. The era of AI evangelism is giving way to an era of AI evaluation. The hype is being tested against reality, and so far, reality is keeping pace. The mind becomes the machine. AI agents and digital workers. Picture a modern office, rows of desks, glowing monitors, coffee cups slowly go cold, keyboards clicking in an arrhythmic symphony. Now picture that same office 5 years from now. Half the desks are empty. The coffee machine has been unplugged, and the remaining workers are not typing. They are supervising. They are watching dashboards that show dozens of AI agents working simultaneously, writing reports, answering customer emails, scheduling supply deliveries, drafting legal contracts, processing insurance claims, all at a speed and volume no team of humans could ever match. This is not speculation. This is the direction every major technology company and management consultancy is pointing toward. And some companies are already partway there. Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff claimed in late 2025 that AI was already handling up to 50% of the company's total workload. JP Morgan Chase's managers were told to avoid hiring new employees as the firm deployed AI across its business lines. Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon said the bank was rethinking how it organizes its people and makes decisions through the lens of AI-powered productivity and efficiency. Ford's CEO Jim Farley warned that AI would replace literally half of all white-collar workers. Walmart's CEO Doug McMillon told the Wall Street Journal that AI was going to change literally every job. These are not technology companies making aspirational claims. These are the leaders of America's largest bank, its largest retailer, and one of its oldest automakers. And they are all saying the same thing. The workforce is about to undergo a transformation, unlike anything in living memory. The mechanism for this transformation is the AI agent. And to understand why agents represent such a sharp break from previous waves of automation, you need to understand what makes them different. Traditional software automation was rigid. A program would follow a fixed set of rules. If a customer placed an order, the system would generate an invoice, reduce inventory, and send a confirmation email. Every step was predetermined. If something unexpected happened, if a customer asked an unusual question, if the data was formatted incorrectly, if a new situation arose that wasn't in the rules, the system would fail, and a human would have to step in. AI agents are different. They operate on general-purpose intelligence. They can interpret ambiguous requests. They can figure out intermediate steps on their own. They can recover from errors. They can learn from feedback. They can collaborate with each other, dividing tasks and coordinating results. And they are improving at a rate that makes each month's capabilities look quaint compared to the next. In practical terms, here is what this means. A company that currently employs 12 people to manage its customer service operation might, within the next 2 or 3 years, need only 2 or 3. Not because the other 9 were bad at their jobs, but because a fleet of AI agents can handle the volume of incoming queries with higher speed, greater consistency, and lower cost. The remaining humans would focus on the hardest, most emotionally complex cases, the ones that require genuine empathy, creative problem-solving, or the ability to navigate a truly unprecedented situation. And this pattern is replicating across every white-collar function. In accounting, AI agents are reconciling ledgers and flagging anomalies. In legal, they are reviewing contracts and identifying risks. In marketing, they are generating campaign copy, analyzing performance data, and optimizing ad spend. In human resources, they are screening resumes, scheduling interviews, and answering employee policy questions. In software development, they are writing, testing, debugging, and deploying code. A Wall Street Journal survey published in October 2025 found that only 20% of workers reported confidence in their ability to find a job in the current market. The article featured the story of a corporate executive who now has one person managing clusters of AI agents that write code, replacing entire teams of developers. This isn't a future scenario. It is a present reality. The numbers tell the story in stark terms. U.S. employers announced 696,309 job cuts in just the first 5 months of 2025, an 80% increase from the same period the previous year. Nearly 55,000 of those cuts were directly attributed to AI by the employment consultancy challenger Gray and Christmas. The technology sector was hit hardest, But the wave was spreading rapidly into finance, legal services, government, retail management, and administration. PwC's AI Jobs Barometer, which analyzed close to 1 billion job postings from 6 continents, found that industries heavily exposed to AI are seeing nearly 3 times higher growth in revenue per employee compared to less exposed industries. That sounds like good news until you realize what it means in human terms. More revenue per employee means fewer employees are needed to generate the same output. The productivity gains are real, but they are being achieved by replacing people, not by giving people better tools. And what comes next is even more dramatic. The concept that is currently sweeping through corporate boardrooms and technology conferences is what the industry calls agentic workflows, systems where multiple AI agents work together in coordinated chains, each handling a different part of a complex process. Imagine a customer complaint arriving at a company. One agent reads the complaint, classifies it, and determines the severity. A second agent pulls up the customer's purchase history and previous interactions. A third agent drafts a response and determines whether a refund is warranted. A fourth agent processes the refund, updates the records, and logs the interaction. A fifth agent monitors for patterns across thousands of such interactions to identify systemic product issues. All of this happens in seconds, without a single human being involved. This is not a theoretical workflow. Companies are building these systems right now. Deloitte projects that inference workloads, the computational work involved in actually running AI models rather than training them, will account for 2/3 of all AI computing in 2026, up from half in 2025. The models have become smart enough that most organizations will not need to train their own. They can use off-the-shelf models and focus entirely on deploying them into workflows. Shannon Bell, the Chief Information and Data Officer of the software company OpenText, described the shift plainly. For her and her teams, it means fewer standalone service desks, fewer reporting platforms, fewer workflow tools, and more AI built directly into how work gets done. The goal is not primarily to reduce headcount, she said, but to reduce tool sprawl and simplify the environment. But the practical effect is the same. Simpler environments require fewer people to manage them, and there is a deeper irony embedded in this transformation. The very workers most at risk are not, as many expected, those in manual labor or routine service jobs. They are educated professionals, the lawyers, the analysts, the programmers, the accountants, the consultants. The people who spent years and small fortunes acquiring specialized knowledge that AI can now replicate in seconds. Consider the biography of a typical white-collar worker in 2026. She graduated from a good university. She took on student loans to pay for it. She studied hard, interned at the right companies, and landed a position at a consulting firm, a law practice, or a financial institution. She spent years climbing the ladder, building expertise, and earning promotions. She assumed, not unreasonably, that the knowledge she had accumulated was her most valuable asset, the thing that made her irreplaceable. And now a piece of software can do her job. Not perfectly, not in every case, but well enough and cheaply enough that her employer is rethinking headcount. She is not being fired for poor performance. She is being made redundant by a technology that did not exist when she started her career. Her knowledge, the asset she spent a decade building, is depreciating at the speed of a software update. This is a deeply disorienting experience, and it is happening to millions of people simultaneously. The psychological literature on job loss is extensive and grim. People who lose their jobs, even when they receive severance and unemployment benefits, experience elevated rates of depression, anxiety, substance abuse, relationship breakdown, and in severe cases, suicide. The loss of professional identity, of the daily structure that work provides, of the social connections formed through a workplace. All of these compound the financial hardship, and when the job loss is not due to personal failure, but to a technological shift that is beyond anyone's control, the sense of helplessness can be particularly acute. Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei put it bluntly in an interview in mid-Minus 2025. AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs, he said, and spike unemployment to 10 to 20% in the next 1 to 5 years. He said that AI companies and the government need to stop sugarcoating what is coming, describing the possible mass elimination of jobs across technology, finance, law, consulting, and other white-collar professions. He called it, without flinching, a potential white-collar bloodbath. Amodei is not an outsider criticizing AI. He is building it. He runs Anthropic, one of the most advanced AI companies in the world, and he is sounding the alarm because he believes that hardly anyone is paying attention. The white-collar storm, when thinking becomes automated. In January of 2025, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported the lowest rate of job openings in professional services since 2013, a 20% year-over-year drop. At the same time, approximately 40% of white-collar job seekers in the preceding year had failed to secure even a single interview, and according to the investment firm Vanguard, hiring for positions paying over $96,000 annually reached a decade-low level. These numbers were not the result of a recession. The economy was technically growing. Stock markets were hitting records. Corporate profits were rising. But something structural was changing beneath the surface. Companies were not hiring because they were discovering they did not need to. The work that those unfilled positions would have handled was increasingly being done by AI. This is the paradox at the heart of the current moment. By nearly every traditional measure, the economy looks healthy. GDP is growing. The stock market is soaring, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average having crossed 50,000 for the first time. Big technology companies are reporting profit margins more than 20% higher than the prior year. But at the ground level, in the job market where real people are trying to find real work, something is visibly wrong. Recent college graduates face an unemployment rate above 9%, with over 41% working in positions that do not require their degrees. Computer science graduates and STEM graduates, the very people who were told they were preparing for the future, are having more trouble finding jobs than at any point in recent memory. Reports from the startup incubator, Y Combinator, indicate that a significant portion of the code at early-stage companies is now written entirely by AI. 4 or 5 years ago, that was unimaginable. The pattern is becoming clear. Companies are not just using AI as a tool, they are using it as a substitute. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella revealed that 30% of the company's code is now AI-generated, even as the company laid off thousands of employees, more than 40% of whom were software engineers. IBM quietly cut approximately 8,000 workers as AI agents took over its human resources department. And these are not isolated examples. They are part of a wave. A Harvard Business School professor studying the phenomenon described the dynamics in careful terms. If you look at the tasks that workers in white-collar occupations perform and compare them with what AI is currently capable of, the overlap affects about 35% of all tasks visible in labor market data. The optimistic interpretation is that AI will handle some tasks while freeing workers to concentrate on other aspects of their jobs. The pessimistic interpretation is that when a machine can handle a third of your responsibilities, your employer starts wondering whether they really need 3 of you, or if 2 would suffice. What makes this different from past technological disruptions is a matter of both speed and scope. The Industrial Revolution unfolded over decades. The transition from agriculture to manufacturing took generations. Even the personal computer revolution, which transformed offices from the 1980s onward, played out over 20 years or more. Workers had time to adapt, retrain, and find new niches. AI is moving faster, much faster. The length of tasks AI can handle is doubling every few months. A capability that did not exist in January may be routine by July. A job that feels secure today may be automated by next quarter, and the disruption is hitting not from the bottom of the skill ladder, but from the middle and the top. Data analysts, market researchers, legal assistants, financial planners, customer service representatives, administrative coordinators, copy editors, graphic designers, software developers. All of these roles are being compressed, consolidated, or eliminated throughout economic history. A principle called the Luddite fallacy has provided comfort during periods of technological change. Named after the English textile workers who smashed mechanical looms in the early 1800s, the principle holds that technology creates more jobs than it destroys. The looms put hand weavers out of work, but they also made cloth cheaper, which increased demand, which created new factory jobs, which gave workers income to spend on other goods and services, which created even more jobs in those sectors. The same logic applied to automobiles, which destroyed the horse and buggy industry, but created far more employment in auto manufacturing, road construction, gas stations, repair shops, insurance, and tourism. But experts increasingly argue that AI challenges this pattern in a fundamental way. Previous waves of automation replaced physical labor or routine cognitive tasks. Workers could move up the skill ladder into more complex cognitive work. AI, however, is automating cognitive labor at all levels simultaneously. It is not pushing workers upward into more sophisticated roles. It is occupying those roles itself. The historian Yuval Noah Harari has described the possibility of an emerging class he calls the useless class, not meaning people who are lazy or worthless, but people who possess no economic skill that can outcompete a machine. In this scenario, the displaced workers cannot simply retrain because the new roles they would train for are also being automated. Whether Harari's grim vision comes to pass is uncertain. Historically, human creativity and adaptability have consistently confounded pessimistic predictions. New forms of work that nobody anticipated have repeatedly emerged. The entire careers of social media manager, app developer, data scientist, and content creator did not exist 20 years ago. It is entirely possible, perhaps likely, that AI will generate new categories of employment that we cannot currently imagine. But the transition period, the gap between old jobs disappearing and new jobs appearing, is where the danger lies. And if the current pace holds, that gap could be wider and more disruptive than anything in living memory. The World Economic Forum estimated that AI, robotics, and automation could displace 92 million jobs worldwide by 2030. That is a staggering number. But the forum also projected that 170 million new roles would be created, yielding a net gain of roughly 78 million jobs. The problem is that the new jobs require different skills, often at higher levels of education and specialization. 77% of AI-related jobs currently require a master's degree, and 18% require a doctoral degree. The truck driver whose job is automated away cannot simply walk into a machine learning lab and begin working. And there is a less quantifiable but equally important dimension to this transformation. Work provides more than income. It provides structure, purpose, identity, and social connection. The legendary investor Howard Marks has described AI's impact on employment as terrifying, emphasizing that financial support alone will not replace the psychological and social benefits of employment. When people lose their jobs, they do not just lose money. They lose a sense of who they are and where they belong. This is not an abstraction. It is a reality that psychologists and sociologists have documented extensively through studies of long-term unemployment, showing increased rates of depression, substance abuse, family breakdown, and social isolation. Researchers at the Brookings Institution recently completed an analysis of which workers are most and least equipped to navigate AI-driven job displacement. Their findings were illuminating and sobering. Of the 37.1 million workers in occupations highly exposed to AI, approximately 70%, or 26.5 million people, were employed in jobs with a relatively high capacity to manage transitions. They had savings, transferable skills, and local opportunities. But 6.1 million workers, primarily in clerical and administrative roles, lacked that adaptive capacity. They had limited savings, were often older, had narrow skill sets, and lived in areas with few alternative opportunities. And 86% of these most vulnerable workers were women. So the picture that is emerging is not one of simple doom. It is more nuanced and in some ways more troubling. AI will create enormous productivity gains. It will generate new industries, new capabilities, new forms of value, but the benefits will be distributed unevenly. Those who own AI systems, who understand how to deploy them, who have the education and resources to adapt, will do very well. Those who do not will face a struggle that is intensifying with every passing quarter. And the pace of that intensification is accelerating. Every new model release brings a new set of capabilities. Every capability breakthrough opens a new set of tasks to automation. Every wave of automation puts a new category of workers at risk. It is not a question of whether this will transform the economy. It is a question of how fast and whether our institutions can keep up. Bodies of steel, the rise of humanoid robots. Everything we have discussed so far involves intelligence that lives behind a screen, software that thinks, writes, codes, and communicates. But intelligence confined to a computer has a fundamental limitation. It cannot pick up a box. It cannot clean the floor. It cannot change a bandage, stack a shelf, weld a joint, or harvest a field. The physical world, with all its unpredictable textures and weights and obstacles, has remained largely the domain of human hands and human muscles. That is about to change. 2025 and 2026 mark the beginning of what the technology industry is calling physical AI, the merger of artificial intelligence with robotic bodies that can move through and manipulate the real world. And the form these machines are increasingly taking is one that will be instantly familiar. They look like us. They walk on two legs. They have two arms and hands with fingers. They stand roughly human height. They are humanoid robots. And they are no longer confined to research labs and viral demonstration videos. They are stepping onto factory floors and into warehouses. And the timeline for their arrival in homes and hospitals is measured in years, not decades. The numbers tell a story of explosive growth. Global funding for humanoid robotic startups grew from about $308 million in 2020 to $1.1 billion in 2024. And the number for 2025 was significantly higher. Venture capital poured roughly $2.5 billion into the sector in 2024 alone. Goldman Sachs has projected the global humanoid robot market could reach $38 billion by 2035, while some analysts envision a total market exceeding $5 trillion over the next 2 decades. The companies driving this revolution read like a roster of the most ambitious engineering ventures on the planet. Tesla is developing Optimus, with announced plans for pilot production lines capable of scaling to 1 million units per year. Figure AI, backed by Microsoft, has announced BotQ, a new manufacturing plant in Austin, Texas, with initial capacity for 12,000 humanoid robots annually, and plans to scale to 100,000 units. Agility Robotics has deployed its Digit robot in real warehouse environments, moving totes and handling repetitive logistics tasks for paying customers. Aptronic's Apollo robot, developed in collaboration with Google DeepMind, is being tested in automotive manufacturing environments. In China, the electric vehicle maker XPeng announced a $13.8 billion investment in humanoid robotics in early 2025, aiming to deploy thousands of factory units by 2027, and the costs are falling. The Bank of America Institute projects that the material cost of a humanoid robot will drop from around $35,000 in 2025 to between $13,000 and $17,000 per unit within the next decade. To put that in context, the average American worker earns roughly $60,000 per year in salary alone, not counting benefits, insurance, sick days, and management overhead. A robot that costs $15,000 and works around the clock without rest breaks or health insurance represents a profoundly disruptive economic proposition. What are these robots actually doing today? The honest answer is that they are doing relatively simple things, but doing them reliably and in real commercial environments. At a Spanx apparel distribution center, Agility's digit robots move totes between autonomous mobile robots and conveyor systems. It is a repetitive, physically demanding task that humans find exhausting, and that has been chronically understaffed due to labor shortages. Mercedes-Benz is testing humanoid robots from Aptronic for repetitive, physically taxing tasks in areas where worker shortages are most severe. BMW is experimenting with humanoid robots at its South Carolina factory for tasks requiring a kind of dexterity that traditional industrial robot arms cannot achieve, including precision manipulation, complex gripping, and two-handed coordination. The pattern emerging is consistent. The first generation of commercially deployed humanoid robots is targeting what the industry calls the 3Ds: dull, dirty, and dangerous. Warehouse logistics, manufacturing assembly, material handling. These are jobs that are physically demanding, that carry a high injury rate, and that many workers would rather not do. And critically, they are jobs where labor shortages are already acute and worsening as populations age in advanced economies. But the ambitions extend far beyond the factory floor. The longer-term vision, and one that companies like Tesla are explicitly pursuing, is a humanoid robot for the home, a machine that can unload a dishwasher, fold laundry, carry groceries, assist an elderly person with rehabilitation exercises, mow the lawn, and respond to spoken instructions in natural language. The technology for this does not fully exist yet. Current robots can do some of these tasks in controlled demonstrations, but doing them reliably, safely, and affordably in the chaotic environment of a real household remains several years away. Industry forecasts suggest that consumer-level humanoid robots could begin arriving in homes by 2028 to 2030, with mass adoption potentially taking shape in the 2030s and 2040s. But if there is one lesson the AI era has taught us, it is that timelines have a habit of compressing. What seemed 10 years away has a tendency to arrive in 5. The implications for the labor market are enormous. Bain & Company estimates that within 5 years, robots will likely be able to perform a wide range of physical tasks at a cost that rivals or beats human labor. Up to 30% of hours currently worked across the US economy could be automated by 2030. And unlike software agents, which threaten white-collar knowledge work, humanoid robots threaten the physical jobs that have traditionally been considered safe from automation: warehousing, manufacturing, food service, healthcare support, construction, and domestic labor. If both trends continue, if AI agents automate the desk and humanoid robots automate the factory and the warehouse and eventually the home, the question is no longer which jobs will be affected, The question is which jobs will be left. There is something profound and slightly eerie about a machine that is built in the shape of a human being. It touches something deep in our psychology, a mixture of fascination and unease that the Japanese have captured in the concept of the uncanny valley. The discomfort we feel when a machine looks almost, but not quite human. Humanoid robots push us to confront questions about identity and uniqueness that we have never had to face before. If a machine can walk like me, talk like me, lift what I lift, learn what I learn, and eventually think what I think, what is it that makes me irreplaceable? What is the irreducible core of being human? These questions are not yet urgent for most people. The robots currently deployed in warehouses are crude compared to science fiction fantasies. They move slowly, handle limited tasks, and require careful supervision. But the pace of improvement is breathtaking. Robotic mobility and dexterity are approaching human levels. Natural language AI allows humans to instruct robots without specialized coding. Robots can learn tasks through demonstration, watching a human perform a sequence and then replicating it. And because they are built in human form, they can operate in environments designed for humans, navigating stairs, narrow aisles, and existing facilities without requiring expensive modifications. The military is watching this space closely. So are search and rescue organizations, space agencies, and companies operating in hazardous environments like mining and offshore drilling. A humanoid robot that can navigate rubble, climb ladders, and manipulate tools in a burning building could save human lives. A robot that can perform maintenance on a space station or explore the surface of Mars has obvious appeal. The applications extend far beyond the factory floor. But the applications that will touch the most lives are the mundane ones. The robot that moves boxes in a warehouse. The robot that helps an elderly person get dressed. The robot that cleans an office building at night. The robot that stocks shelves at a grocery store. These are the jobs that are hardest to fill with human workers, and the ones where humanoid robots will first prove their economic value. We are at the very beginning of this transformation. The number of commercially deployed humanoid robots in the world is still measured in hundreds, not thousands, but the trajectory is pointing sharply upward. And the companies, investors, and nations pouring resources into this space are betting that the 20s and 30s of this century will see humanoid robotics follow a growth curve similar to personal computing, smartphones, or electric vehicles, starting slowly and then erupting into mass adoption. The doctor will see you now, and it's not human. Imagine receiving a cancer diagnosis, not from a tired oncologist squinting at a scan after a 14-hour shift, but from a system that has reviewed your entire medical history, compared your imaging results against millions of previous cases, cross-referenced your genetic profile with the latest research, identified the specific mutation driving your tumor, and recommended a treatment protocol tailored precisely to your biology, all within seconds, and with a diagnostic accuracy that exceeds any human specialist alive. This is not the medicine of 2050. This is the medicine being built right now. Healthcare is one of the domains where artificial intelligence has the potential to produce not just incremental improvements, but genuine miracles. the stakes are as high as they get, because the inefficiencies in modern healthcare are not merely inconvenient, they are deadly. Medical errors are among the leading causes of death in the United States. Drug development takes an average of 10 to 15 years and costs roughly $2.6 billion per approved medicine. Most drug candidates fail. Most clinical trials produce ambiguous results, and even when treatments exist, they often are not matched to the right patients at the right time. AI is attacking these problems on multiple fronts simultaneously. In diagnostics, AI systems are reading medical images, X-rays, MRIs, CT scans, mammograms, and pathology slides, with accuracy that in many cases matches or exceeds human specialists. Google's healthcare AI team unveiled next-generation models at Google I/O 2025, including specialized systems for imaging interpretation, clinical documentation, and medical co-pilots that assist physicians in real time. Microsoft launched an imaging model called MedImage Insight Premium, a multimodal system for X-rays and pathology that delivers accuracy up to 15% higher than previous versions. The FDA approved 4 new AI diagnostic tools in a single month in late 2025. These systems work alongside doctors, providing second opinions and catching conditions in early stages that human eyes might miss. The implications for cost are profound. Early detection of cancer through AI screening saves an average of $150,000 per patient in treatment costs. Hospitals using AI diagnostics report 18% lower imaging costs due to faster scan analysis and reduced need for repeat tests. For a healthcare system that consumes nearly 20% of American GDP, these savings scale into the hundreds of billions. But the most transformative application of AI in medicine may be in drug discovery. Traditional drug development follows a brutally inefficient pipeline. Scientists identify a potential target, screen thousands of chemical compounds, test candidates in the lab, then in animals, and then in humans through 3 phases of clinical trials. The process from hypothesis to approved medicine averages 12 to 15 years, and approximately 90% of drugs that enter clinical trials ultimately fail. AI is compressing these timelines dramatically. Researchers have demonstrated AI systems that can screen millions of molecular structures against bacterial targets within weeks, a process that would take conventional methods years. One AI company, in silico medicine, used its platform to identify a novel disease target for idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, design a molecule to hit that target, and advance it to human clinical trials in roughly 18 months. That timeline is extraordinary by pharmaceutical standards. Drug discovery firms using AI report average cost savings of $700 million per approved drug. They are reducing failed candidates by 70% in early development, shortening preclinical testing from 4 years to 18 months, and lowering clinical trial costs through more precise patient selection. Total healthcare AI investment reached $9.8 billion in 2025, up 67% from the previous year. Beyond discovery and diagnosis, AI is beginning to reshape the daily practice of medicine itself. Clinical decision support systems powered by AI are helping physicians navigate the overwhelming volume of medical literature that no human could ever read in a lifetime. The platform Open Evidence has become one of the most widely adopted tools of its kind in the United States, allowing physicians to rapidly search medical literature, synthesize findings, and check for drug interactions. A large share of U.S. physicians now incorporate it into their daily workflows. AI is also transforming how clinical notes are recorded. Physicians historically spend enormous portions of their time documenting patient encounters, a task that is critically important but deeply tedious. AI systems that listen to doctor-patient conversations and automatically generate structured clinical notes are among the most enthusiastically adopted tools in healthcare because they directly address one of the most universal pain points in the profession: paperwork. And then there are the moonshot applications, the ones that sound like they belong in a science fiction novel, but are already in development. AI systems that can predict patient deterioration before symptoms become apparent. Platforms that create digital avatars of patients to simulate how they might respond to different treatments. Quantum computing systems coupled with AI that screen drug candidates 10,000 times faster than traditional methods. The potential here is almost beyond estimation. If AI can reduce the time to develop a new drug from 15 years to 3, if it can catch cancers a decade before they become symptomatic, if it can match every patient with the precise treatment that works for their unique biology, the impact on human health and longevity could dwarf every other medical advance in history. Think about what this means in human terms. Globally, cancer kills roughly 10 million people every year. Heart disease kills another 18 million. Alzheimer's disease affects 50 million people worldwide and is projected to triple by 2050. These are not statistics. They are mothers and fathers, children and friends, lives cut short or diminished by diseases that we have been fighting for decades with only incremental progress. AI represents a genuine paradigm shift in that fight. Not because it replaces human medical judgment, though in narrow diagnostic tasks it increasingly matches or exceeds it, but because it can process information at a scale and speed that is simply impossible for human minds. A single research paper might contain a crucial insight that could save thousands of lives, but no human researcher can read and synthesize the millions of papers published each year. AI can. A patient's genetic profile might contain a subtle marker that predicts how they will respond to a particular treatment. But identifying that marker requires comparing their genome against vast databases in ways that exceed human cognitive capacity. AI can do that too. The AlphaFold system developed by Google DeepMind, which predicts the three-dimensional structure of proteins from their amino acid sequences, has already been described as one of the most significant scientific breakthroughs of the century. Understanding protein structure is fundamental to understanding disease, because proteins are the molecular machines that perform virtually every function in the human body. When a protein misfolds, disease results. When a drug works, it works by interacting with a protein in a specific way. AlphaFold has predicted the structure of essentially every known protein, a task that would have taken experimental biologists centuries to complete, and this is just the beginning. Researchers are now using AI to design entirely new proteins that do not exist in nature. Proteins that could serve as novel therapeutics, industrial enzymes, or components of entirely new biological systems. The combination of AI-driven drug design with advances in gene therapy, messenger RNA technology refined during the pandemic, and precision medicine approaches tailored to individual patients creates the possibility of a medical revolution that unfolds not over centuries, but over the next 2 decades. The dream is a world where diseases are caught before symptoms appear, where treatments are precisely matched to each patient's unique biology, where new medicines are developed in months rather than decades, and where the practice of medicine shifts from reaction to prevention, from guesswork to precision, from scarcity to abundance. AI will not achieve that dream alone. It requires investment, political will, regulatory reform, and the hard work of millions of healthcare professionals. But it may be the tool that finally makes it possible, the classroom without walls. There is a study from Harvard University, published in 2025, that stopped a lot of educators in their tracks. Researchers found that students using AI tutors in a physics course learned more than twice as much as students in traditional active learning classrooms. And they did it in less time. That result was not a marginal improvement. It was a doubling of learning outcomes. And this is not an isolated finding. Across the educational landscape, from elementary schools to graduate programs, AI is beginning to demonstrate a capability that teachers have always dreamed of, but never been able to achieve at scale: genuine personalization. The ability to meet every student exactly where they are, identify exactly what they are struggling with, adapt the material in real time, provide immediate feedback, and do all of this simultaneously for every student in the class, or every student in the world. The global AI education market reached $7.57 billion in 2025 and is projected to exceed $112 billion by 2034. That growth reflects a massive shift in how educators, institutions, and governments view the role of AI in learning. In the 2024-2025 school year, 85% of teachers and 86% of students reported using AI in some form. Global student AI usage jumped from 66% in 2024 to 92% in 2025. By the start of 2026, an estimated 86% of students in higher education use AI as their primary research and brainstorming tool. The most immediate application is the AI tutor. Systems powered by generative AI can now function as intelligent tutoring systems that go far beyond rigidly scripted digital textbooks. They can engage in natural dialogue with students, asking questions, providing hints, shifting strategies, and adapting their explanations based on how the student is responding. They can detect when a student is confused, try a different analogy, provide a worked example, or suggest a simpler prerequisite concept. And they can do this for every student simultaneously, at 3 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon, in English, Mandarin, or Portuguese. The OECD's Digital Education Outlook for 2026. A comprehensive analysis of emerging research on AI in education found that when AI tools are guided by clear teaching principles, they can significantly support learning. Collaborative learning scenarios, where AI tools are embedded as partners in the learning process, showed increases in both student knowledge and argumentation skills. AI-powered tutoring systems that were co-designed with teachers performed better than those designed purely by technologists, because educators understood how to create productive struggle, when to intervene, and when to let students grapple with difficulty. But the report also sounded a note of caution. When AI is used without pedagogical guidance, when students simply outsource their work to a chatbot, the result is enhanced performance with no real learning. The student gets the right answer, but they haven't learned anything. They haven't developed the ability to think independently, to reason through a problem, to evaluate evidence, to form an argument. The critical thinking that education is supposed to cultivate is bypassed entirely. This tension is playing out in real time in classrooms around the world. On one side, teachers are reporting that AI tools have improved their teaching methods, with 69% saying so in a recent survey, and 55% saying AI gives them more time to interact directly with students. On the other side, 70% of teachers worry that AI weakens critical thinking and research skills. And over half of students agree that using AI makes them feel less disconnected from their teachers. The path forward likely lies in what educators are calling AI literacy, the ability to understand, critique, and responsibly use AI tools rather than simply being consumed by them. This is rapidly becoming a core competency, alongside traditional skills like reading, writing, and mathematics. Schools that treat AI as a forbidden temptation and try to ban it entirely are finding that approach unenforceable and counterproductive. Schools that embrace AI without guardrails are finding that students learn to produce impressive-looking work without developing a genuine understanding. The most promising approaches are those that integrate AI into the learning process in ways that amplify what teachers already do well. AI handles the routine work, grading standardized assignments, generating practice problems, providing instant feedback on writing mechanics, tracking student progress, while teachers focus on the things AI cannot replicate: building relationships, mentoring, facilitating discussions, inspiring curiosity, and helping students find meaning in what they learn. As one education researcher put it, the future is not about choosing between AI and human teachers. It is about figuring out how each can do what they do best and building systems where they work together. A teacher empowered by AI can be dramatically more effective than a teacher working alone, reaching more students, catching more problems early, and spending their scarce time where it matters most, on the human connections that make education transformative. But the transformation extends beyond traditional classrooms. Consider the implications for lifelong learning, a concept that has been discussed for decades, but rarely implemented at scale. In a world where the skills required for employment are changing every few years rather than every few decades, The idea that education ends at 22 or 25 becomes absurd. People will need to learn continuously throughout their lives, acquiring new capabilities as old ones become obsolete. AI makes this kind of continuous learning not just feasible, but natural. A factory worker whose job is automated could sit down with an AI tutor that assesses their existing skills, identifies the most promising new career paths given their abilities and their local job market, designs a personalized curriculum to bridge the gap, and guides them through that curriculum at their own pace, answering questions, providing encouragement, and adapting the material as they progress. This is not a distant fantasy. The technological capability exists today. What is missing is the institutional framework to deploy it at scale. Think about what this means for the developing world, where teacher shortages are chronic and educational quality is uneven. An AI tutor that speaks the local language, understands the local curriculum, and can operate on a basic smartphone could bring quality education to millions of children who currently have no access to it. UNESCO has highlighted both the extraordinary opportunity and the significant risk. While AI could democratize education on an unprecedented scale, it could also widen existing divides if access to the best AI tools remains concentrated in wealthy nations and privileged communities. The stakes here could not be higher. Education is the mechanism through which societies prepare the next generation for the world they will inhabit. If that world is going to be radically different from the one we know today, then education itself must be radically reimagined. The factory model of schooling, where students sit in rows, absorb standardized material, and are assessed through standardized tests, was designed for the industrial age. The AI age demands something different, an educational system that cultivates creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, adaptability, and the ability to collaborate with both humans and machines. Building that system is one of the great challenges of our time, the road that drives itself. There was a time, not long ago, when the self-driving car felt perpetually 5 years away. It was the technology of the future that never quite arrived, always just beyond reach, always accompanied by another set of promised deadlines and another round of delays. Autonomous vehicles became something of a joke in technology circles, the ultimate example of a problem that seemed simple on the surface, but proved diabolically hard in practice. That skepticism was not unfounded. The real world is messy. Roads are filled with unpredictable humans, darting pedestrians, construction zones, whether that changes by the minute, ambiguous lane markings, and situations so unusual that no algorithm could have anticipated them. For years, self-driving systems excelled in DMOS and controlled environments, but stumbled badly in the chaotic reality of actual streets. And yet, quietly and methodically, the technology has been advancing. As of early 2026, something has genuinely changed. We are no longer in the era of promises and prototypes. We are in the era of real rides, real passengers, and real commercial operations. Waymo, a subsidiary of Alphabet, is now providing more than 450,000 paid robotaxi rides per week across its operations in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Phoenix. That is not a trial. That is a commercial service. operating at scale, carrying ordinary passengers to real destinations in fully autonomous vehicles with no human driver behind the wheel. In China, where autonomous vehicle development has been accelerating at a remarkable pace, commercial ride-hailing services using driverless vehicles are handling more than 250,000 trips per week. Zoox, Amazon's autonomous vehicle division, launched its purpose-built robotaxi in Las Vegas in September 2025. The vehicle has no steering wheel, no pedals, and no place for a human driver to sit. It was designed from the ground up to operate without human intervention. And Zoox plans to begin charging for rides in 2026, expanding to San Francisco and beyond. The technology stack making this possible has matured considerably. Modern autonomous vehicles rely on a fusion of sensors, including cameras, LiDAR, which uses laser pulses to build a three-dimensional map of the surroundings, radar, and GPS. These inputs are processed by AI systems that have been trained on millions of miles of driving data, enabling the vehicle to perceive objects, predict their movements, plan a safe path, and execute driving maneuvers in real time. A key development has been the emergence of what the industry calls end-to-end learning, where a single large AI model handles the entire driving pipeline from raw sensor input to steering and acceleration commands, rather than separate hand-coded modules for perception, planning, and control. This approach has the potential to handle edge cases more gracefully, because the system learns to drive in a more holistic, human-like way, rather than following rigid programmed rules. For autonomous trucks, 2025 and 2026 represent an important inflection point. Several companies are planning or have begun commercial driverless trucking operations on defined highway routes in the United States. Long-haul trucking is in some ways an easier problem than urban driving, since highways are more predictable environments with fewer pedestrians and intersections. But it represents an enormous market with chronic driver shortages. On the consumer side, most new vehicles sold today include some form of advanced driver assistance systems. Features like adaptive cruise control, automatic emergency braking, lane keeping assist, and blind spot monitoring are becoming standard equipment rather than premium options. General Motors, Super Cruise, and Mercedes-Benz's Drive Pilot system represent the current commercial state of the art for consumer vehicles, offering hands-free highway driving under defined conditions. Mercedes-Benz has taken a notable step by obtaining certification for a Level 3 autonomous driving system, meaning the car can drive itself on certain roads under certain conditions, and the human driver is legally permitted to disengage from the driving task entirely. This is significant not just technically, but legally and socially. When a Level 3 system is active and causes an accident, the manufacturer, not the driver, bears liability. The 2026 Mercedes-Benz EQS and S-Class sedans with Drive Pilot will feature a standardized turquoise light that informs other drivers the vehicle is operating autonomously, a visual signal that marks the emergence of a new category of road user. The economic implications are vast. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates that 94% of car crashes involve human error. If autonomous systems can eliminate even a fraction of those accidents, the savings in lives, injuries, and property damage run into the hundreds of billions of dollars annually. The ripple effects would transform the insurance industry, reshape urban planning, reduce demand for parking infrastructure, and alter patterns of vehicle ownership. And there is a broader philosophical implication. The automobile is one of the most personally empowering technologies in human history. It gave individuals unprecedented freedom of movement, but it came with a brutal cost, roughly 40,000 deaths per year in the United States alone, year after year, decade after decade. If AI can deliver the freedom of the car without the carnage, it would represent one of the greatest safety improvements in human history. We are not there yet. Level 5 autonomy, a vehicle that can drive anywhere in any conditions with no human oversight whatsoever, remains years to perhaps decades away. Current systems operate within defined geographic areas and under specific conditions. But the trajectory is clear, and the commercial deployments are accelerating. The self-driving car is no longer 5 years away. It is here. It is just not everywhere yet. The ripple effects of autonomous transportation extend far beyond the act of driving. Consider the trucking industry. There are approximately 3.5 million truck drivers in the United States alone, and long-haul trucking is one of the most common occupations in many states. If autonomous trucks can reliably handle highway routes, the impact on these workers and their communities would be enormous. It would also have cascading effects on the vast ecosystem of truck stops, motels, diners, and repair shops that line America's highways and depend on human drivers for their survival. Consider urban planning. Cities devote roughly 30% of their land area to parking. If autonomous ride-hailing services become ubiquitous, the need for private car ownership, and thus for private parking, drops sharply. That frees up enormous amounts of urban space that could be repurposed for housing, parks, businesses, or public facilities. Traffic congestion would decrease as autonomous vehicles communicate with each other and optimize traffic flow. The character of cities could change fundamentally. Consider the insurance industry. Auto insurance is a $300 billion industry in the United States alone. If autonomous vehicles dramatically reduce the number of crashes, the need for auto insurance shrinks proportionally. Entire sectors of the economy that exist to manage the consequences of human driving errors, body shops, personal injury lawyers, emergency medical services, and auto glass repair could see their demand plummet. And consider the human dimension. For elderly people who can no longer drive, for people with disabilities, for teenagers too young for a license, and for anyone who cannot afford a car, autonomous vehicles represent freedom, the ability to summon a safe, affordable ride at any time, to go anywhere without depending on someone else to take you, is a profound expansion of human independence. It is easy to get lost in the economics and the technology and forget that at the end of every transportation improvement, there is a human being who can suddenly go places they could not go before. The full realization of this potential is still years away, but the seeds are planted and growing, and the pace of progress has shifted from glacial to rapid. The car of the future is not a human with a better dashboard. It is a machine that does not need a human at all. What is remarkable is how quickly the narrative has shifted. 5 years ago, after a series of high-profile accidents involving early self-driving systems, public confidence in autonomous vehicles cratered. Headlines screamed about the dangers. Regulators pulled back. Some companies abandoned their programs entirely. The dream of the self-driving car seemed to be receding into the distance. But the technology kept improving, quietly, methodically, iteratively. Sensor systems became more accurate. AI models became better at interpreting complex scenes. Safety records improved. And then Waymo crossed a threshold that silenced many critics. Hundreds of thousands of rides, week after week, with a safety record that compared favorably to human drivers. Not perfectly safe. No transportation system is, but demonstrably, measurably safer than the alternative. The lesson here is broader than automobiles. When it comes to AI-powered systems, initial hype is often followed by disappointment, which is followed by a long period of quiet improvement, which is followed by an inflection point where the technology suddenly works well enough to matter. We have seen this pattern with chatbots, with image generation, with protein folding, with coding assistance, and now with autonomous driving. The future does not arrive in a straight line. It arrives in fits and starts. And then, one morning, you look up and realize the world has changed. The price of intelligence, energy, and the invisible crisis. There is a retired couple in Granville, Ohio, named Ken and Carol Apaki. Ken keeps a meticulous spreadsheet of every charge on his electric bill, going back 5 years. In 2020, they paid between 11 and 12 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity. By 2025, that number had risen to 19 cents, a 60% increase. Carol suspects it has something to do with some new construction in the area. She is right. Near their home and across vast stretches of the American landscape, enormous buildings are rising from the earth. They are not apartments or shopping centers or factories in any traditional sense. They are data centers, massive warehouses filled with thousands upon thousands of specialized computer chips that consume electricity at an almost incomprehensible rate. And they exist for one reason: to power artificial intelligence. Every question you ask a chatbot, every image AI generates, every document it summarizes, every line of code it writes requires computation. And computation requires electricity, a lot of it. A single AI-focused hyperscale data center annually consumes as much electricity as 100,000 households. The largest ones currently under construction will use 20 times that amount. The numbers, when you step back and look at them in aggregate, are staggering. US data centers consumed 183 terawatt-hours of electricity in 2024, more than 4% of the country's total electricity consumption. That is roughly equivalent to the annual electricity demand of the entire nation of Pakistan. By 2030, this figure is projected to grow by 133%, reaching 426 terawatt-hours. Globally, data center electricity consumption reached around 415 terawatt-hours in 2024, approximately 1.5% of total global electricity use, and AI is the primary driver of this growth. AI operations alone could potentially consume over 40% of all data center power by 2026. The critical power capacity needed to support data centers worldwide is expected to nearly double between 2023 and 2026, reaching 96 gigawatts globally. The consequences are already being felt in the most literal way possible. Higher electricity bills for ordinary consumers. Goldman Sachs reported that U.S. electricity prices jumped 6.9% in 2025, more than double the headline inflation rate of 2.9%. The bank projects that prices will continue to rise through the end of the decade, as data centers account for 40% of electricity demand growth. In the PJM electricity market, which covers 13 states from Illinois to North Carolina, data centers accounted for an estimated $9.3 billion price increase in capacity market costs. As a result, the average residential bill is expected to rise by as much as $18 per month in some areas. A Carnegie Mellon University study estimates that data centers and cryptocurrency mining could increase the average U.S. electricity bill by 8% by 2030, with potential increases exceeding 25% in the highest demand markets like Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia, known as Data Center Alley, is ground zero for this crisis. About 70% of the world's internet traffic flows through the area. Over 200 data centers occupy a 30 square mile area and collectively consume roughly the same amount of electricity as the city of Boston. Virginia's dominant utility, Dominion Energy, proposed its first base rate increase since 1992 in early 2025, adding about $8.5 per month for typical households. The political backlash is growing. The issue of AI-driven electricity costs has become a genuine political flashpoint. Democrats Mickey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger won gubernatorial elections in New Jersey and Virginia, respectively, in 2025, partly on promises to bring utility bills under control. Senator Bernie Sanders has spoken against data centers. Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has opposed new data center projects. Even President Trump, who has embraced AI as an engine of economic growth, has begun to view rising electricity prices as a political liability and secured a promise from Microsoft that its data centers would not drive up consumer costs. The grid itself is under strain. PJM Interconnection, the largest grid operator in the United States, serving over 65 million people across 13 states, projects it will be 6 gigawatts short of its reliability requirements by 2027. The president described levels of projected strain he has never seen before. There is a near-miss event that illustrates the risk. Reuters reported that a power incident in Data Center Alley came close to causing a widespread blackout. The concentration of energy demand in a relatively small area creates fragility. One failure cascades. The technology industry is aware of this problem and is investing heavily in solutions. Approximately 60% of energy consumed by data centers today comes from fossil fuels. But renewable energy production for data centers is growing at about 22% per year. tech companies are building and contracting for massive solar and wind installations. Microsoft operates a data center in Wyoming, powered entirely by wind energy. Google purchases wind power for facilities in Belgium. Since the beginning of 2025, leading AI companies have signed at least a dozen large solar energy contracts, each adding more than 100 megawatts of capacity. Nuclear energy is also entering the conversation. Several technology companies have explored deals to source power from nuclear plants, including small modular reactors that are still in development. The appeal of nuclear power is its ability to provide steady, carbon-free electricity around the clock, unlike solar and wind, which are intermittent, but the fundamental tension remains. AI is simultaneously one of the most promising technologies for addressing climate change. Through applications like optimizing energy grids, improving weather forecasting, designing more efficient batteries and solar cells, and accelerating climate research, and one of the largest new sources of energy demand. Companies that have pledged to reach net zero emissions by 2030 are finding their energy consumption growing faster than their clean energy supply. Google and Microsoft, both of which have ambitious climate goals, have seen their total carbon emissions increase as AI workloads have grown. The energy challenge is perhaps the most underappreciated constraint on the AI future. The intelligence explosion cannot happen without an energy explosion to match it, and whether that energy comes from renewables, nuclear, or fossil fuels will determine not just the pace of AI development, but its environmental legacy. As one energy analyst put it plainly, ordinary people are going to end up subsidizing the wealthiest industry in the world. Unless the rules change so that more of the costs of expanding electricity infrastructure are paid by the data centers themselves, the burden will fall disproportionately on the people least able to bear it. The irony of the AI energy crisis is profound. Many of the same companies driving data center expansion have made bold pledges about sustainability and carbon neutrality. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta have all committed to reaching net zero emissions, typically by 2030. But the explosive growth in AI workloads has made these commitments far harder to keep. Both Google and Microsoft have publicly acknowledged that their total carbon emissions have increased in recent years, even as they invest billions in renewable energy. Because the growth in AI demand is outpacing the clean energy supply, there is also a geographic dimension to this problem that deserves attention. Data centers are not distributed evenly across the globe. They cluster in regions with specific advantages: reliable electricity, cool climates that reduce cooling costs, fast internet connections, and favorable tax policies. This creates localized stress points. In Ireland, data centers already consume around 21% of national electricity, and that figure could reach 32% by 2026. In Virginia, the concentration of data centers has triggered the first major utility rate increase in over 3 decades. In parts of China, where coal still generates the majority of electricity, the proliferation of data centers is adding directly to an already severe pollution problem. The solutions being pursued are varied and, in some cases, ambitious to the point of audacity. Several technology companies have explored partnering with nuclear power plants, including the possibility of building dedicated small modular reactors to power individual data center campuses. Microsoft has signed deals to source power from the restart of the 3 Mile Island nuclear facility in Pennsylvania. Amazon has purchased a data center campus adjacent to a nuclear plant in Pennsylvania. Google has signed what it described as the world's first corporate agreement to purchase power from small modular nuclear reactors. The appeal of nuclear power for data centers is straightforward. It provides steady, carbon-free electricity around the clock, unlike solar and wind, which are intermittent and require storage solutions. But nuclear also carries its own risks and challenges: high upfront costs, lengthy construction timelines, waste disposal concerns, and the ever-present specter of public fear and political opposition. Efficiency improvements are another avenue: more efficient chips, better cooling systems, smarter workload management, and the use of AI itself to optimize data center operations can reduce energy consumption per unit of computation. Some researchers estimate that AI-driven optimization of energy grids could ultimately save more energy than AI consumes. Though that balance is not yet close to being achieved, the fundamental question is whether the energy supply can grow fast enough to sustain the AI revolution without destabilizing power grids, driving up consumer costs, and undermining climate goals. The answer at the moment is uncertain. What is certain is that the invisible infrastructure that powers artificial intelligence, the cables and transformers and generators and cooling towers, is every bit as important to the AI future as the algorithms and training data. The most brilliant AI model in the world is useless without electricity, and electricity does not materialize out of thin air. The end of the paycheck, universal basic income, and the new social contract. We have now arrived at the question that everything else has been leading toward. If AI agents automate the office, if humanoid robots automate the warehouse and the factory, and eventually the home, if autonomous vehicles automate transportation, if AI systems transform healthcare, education, scientific research, and creative work, then what happens to the fundamental bargain that has organized human economies for millennia? That bargain is simple. You work, you get paid. You use that payment to buy the things you need to survive and the things you want to enjoy. Your spending becomes someone else's income. Their spending becomes yours. The entire economy is a vast circulatory system of labor and money, production and consumption, effort and reward. But what happens when the effort part breaks down? What happens when machines can produce most of what we need and do most of what we do? Where does the money come from? This is the question that has moved universal basic income, or UBI, from the margins of political discourse to its center. The idea is straightforward. Every citizen receives a regular, unconditional cash payment from the government, enough to cover basic needs, regardless of whether they work, how much they earn, or any other condition. You receive it simply because you exist. The concept has a long intellectual history. Thomas Paine, one of America's founding fathers, proposed a form of basic income in the 18th century. The economist Milton Friedman, a champion of free markets, advocated for a negative income tax that functioned similarly. Martin Luther King Jr. called for a guaranteed income. In 2020, presidential candidate Andrew Yang brought UBI into mainstream American politics, proposing a freedom dividend of $1,000 per month for every adult citizen. But the AI revolution has given the idea new urgency and a different character. This is no longer just a tool for fighting poverty or simplifying the welfare state. It is increasingly discussed as a necessary adaptation to a world where human labor is no longer the primary engine of economic production. The data from UBI experiments is growing. The Stanford Basic Income Lab has documented more than 160 UBI tests or pilots conducted over the past 4 decades. The International Public Policy Observatory estimates that over 38 such pilots have taken place across Europe, North America, and Asia since 2015. While the evidence is still limited, the studies generally show positive effects on poverty reduction, health improvement, and individual well-being. One of the most significant experiments was backed by Sam Altman and OpenAI. It provided $1,000 per month to 1,000 low-income participants in Texas and Illinois for 3 years, with a control group receiving just $50. The results showed that recipients used the money for basic needs: housing, food, transportation, and that the payments improved their quality of life without causing them to stop working. But the results also highlighted the complexity of the issue. Simply sending checks is not enough to address the structural changes that AI is bringing. There are several prominent proposals for how UBI in an AI-driven economy might work. Sam Altman himself has proposed an American Equity Fund, a mechanism where large AI companies and landholders would contribute a percentage of their value, roughly 2.5%, annually to a fund distributed to all citizens. This model effectively transfers a share of ownership of the automated economy to the public, ensuring that the enormous wealth generated by AI does not concentrate entirely in the hands of a few shareholders. Bill Gates proposed taxing robots back in 2017. His idea was that companies replacing human workers with automation should pay taxes on those robots at levels comparable to the income taxes paid by the displaced workers. This would slow the pace of automation, giving workers time to adapt, while also generating revenue for retraining programs and social safety nets. The idea of an AI automation tax has gained significant traction. The logic is compelling. If corporations reap enormous productivity gains from replacing human workers with AI, and if those displaced workers then need public support, it makes sense for the companies benefiting most from the transition to fund that support. It also addresses a growing structural problem in tax systems. As more work shifts from taxable human labor to untaxed AI systems, governments face a shrinking revenue base even as demands on social services grow. But UBI also faces serious critiques. The most fundamental is that giving people money does not solve the problem if the underlying economy cannot produce enough of what they want to buy. Income is a claim on output. If AI increases output in some sectors, but leaves others constrained, especially housing, healthcare, and education, which are often supply limited, then more money chasing the same amount of goods produces inflation, not prosperity. There's also the psychological dimension. Howard Marks' observation that financial support alone cannot replace the psychological and social benefits of employment is backed by extensive evidence. The pandemic-era stimulus payments functioned as a kind of temporary UBI experiment. And while they prevented financial catastrophe for millions of families, they were also associated with increases in substance abuse, mental health challenges, and social disconnection. Work is not just a source of income. It is a source of structure, meaning, identity, and community. Strip it away, and you strip away something fundamental to how many people understand themselves. For this reason, many policy experts argue that UBI should not be viewed as a standalone solution, but rather as one component of a broader response that includes massive investment in retraining and education, the creation of new categories of publicly funded work, such as environmental restoration, elder care, community development, and arts, and the redesign of social institutions to provide the structure and purpose that traditional employment once offered. The question of funding is perhaps the most contested aspect of the UBI debate. Where does the money come from? The traditional answer is taxation, but AI complicates the tax picture in fundamental ways. As work shifts from taxable human labor to untaxed machine processes, the traditional income tax base erodes. Fewer workers earning wages means less income tax revenue, even as productivity rises. This creates a paradox. The economy is producing more, but the government is collecting less. Several funding mechanisms have been proposed to address this. Automation taxes, levied on companies that replace human workers with AI or robotic systems, would capture a portion of the productivity gains for redistribution. Wealth taxes targeting the concentrated capital gains that accrue to AI company shareholders could provide another revenue stream. Some economists have proposed a data dividend, the idea that the vast amounts of personal data used to train AI systems represent a form of collective labor that should be compensated. After all, AI models are trained on the photographs, text, conversations, and creative works produced by billions of ordinary people. If that data has value, and it clearly does, perhaps the people who generated it deserve a share of the returns. Corporate taxes on AI companies are another option, though the political challenges are formidable. The companies building the most powerful AI systems are also among the most politically influential entities in the world. OpenAI and Meta have deployed powerful lobbying operations and super PACs to support political candidates who back their agenda and oppose regulation. The idea that these companies would voluntarily accept higher taxes or contribute to a universal income fund requires either extraordinary political will or a fundamental shift in the balance of power between governments and corporations. Ireland provides an interesting early model. Its basic income for the arts program, which began as a 3-year pilot, will become permanent in 2026. It allows people working in creative fields, writing, music, painting, and other arts, to receive a guaranteed income that enables them to focus on their craft without needing a secondary job to cover living expenses. It is a targeted approach that recognizes that some forms of valuable work are not adequately compensated by markets. Kenya's Give Directly program, one of the longest-running cash transfer experiments in the developing world, has provided unconditional cash payments to thousands of rural residents over multiple years. The results have shown improvements in nutrition, health, education, and economic activity, with no significant increase in spending on what critics feared, alcohol or tobacco. The program has become a global reference point for the argument that poor people, given money with no strings attached, generally make reasonable and productive choices. Closer to home, the city of Stockton, California, ran a guaranteed income pilot from 2019 to 2021, providing 125 residents with $500 per month. The results showed that recipients found full-time employment at more than twice the rate of the control group. They reported reduced anxiety and depression. They used the money primarily for food, utilities, and car repairs, the unglamorous necessities of daily life. The Stockton pilot became one of the most cited examples in the UBI literature, not because it proved that UBI is the answer to AI displacement, but because it demonstrated that unconditional cash transfers can work on a small scale without the catastrophic moral hazards that critics fear. The challenge is scaling these experiments to the level of a national economy. A universal basic income of $1,000 per month for every American adult would cost roughly $3 trillion annually. That is an enormous sum, larger than the entire federal budget, minus Social Security and Medicare. Finding a way to fund it without crippling inflation, unsustainable debt, or politically toxic tax increases is the central challenge of the UBI movement. As the AI transformation accelerates, expect the UBI debate to intensify dramatically. It will be one of the defining political questions of the next decade. How do we distribute the gains from artificial intelligence? Who pays? Who benefits? And how do we ensure that a technology with the power to create unprecedented abundance does not instead create unprecedented inequality? When money loses its meaning, the post-scarcity question, Elon Musk, as he often does, took the idea to its furthest extreme. In late 2025, speaking with the ease of someone discussing next week's schedule rather than the reorganization of human civilization, he suggested that within 10 to 20 years, the advancements in AI and robotics would bring humanity to a point where working is optional. There would be no poverty, he said. Money would stop being relevant. If you can think it, you can have it. Musk's vision draws from a deep well of science fiction. The culture novels of Ian M. Banks imagine a post-scarcity civilization managed by benevolent, superintelligent machines, where money has been abolished. Work is entirely optional, and citizens spend their lives pursuing whatever interests them. Star Trek's Federation operates on a similar premise. Matter replicators and fusion power have eliminated material want, and people work not for survival, but for purpose and self-improvement. For most of human history, these visions were pure fantasy. The idea that machines might one day produce everything humanity needs rendering work optional and money obsolete, belonged firmly in the realm of imagination. Philosophers dreamed about it. Economists analyzed it as a thought experiment. Science fiction writers built entire civilizations around it. But nobody expected to see the first credible steps toward it in their own lifetime. And yet here we are. The theoretical groundwork is being laid not by dreamers, but by engineers, economists, and the leaders of some of the most powerful companies ever assembled. The conversation about post-scarcity has migrated from science fiction conventions to Davos, from academic journals to corporate earnings calls. Whether you find that exciting or terrifying probably depends on your position in the current economic order. For most of human history, these visions were pure fantasy. But the combined emergence of AI that can think, robots that can build, and energy systems that can power both at scale has opened a crack, however thin, in the wall between fiction and possibility. The argument goes like this. If AI can automate virtually all cognitive labor, and humanoid robots can automate virtually all physical labor, then the cost of producing goods and services drops toward zero. Food is grown, harvested, processed, and delivered by machines. Homes are designed by AI and constructed by robots. Clothes are manufactured without human hands. Medical care is provided by AI diagnosticians and robotic surgeons. Education is delivered by AI tutors. Entertainment is generated on demand. Every link in the supply chain, from raw materials to finished products, is managed by intelligent systems that work continuously, efficiently, and without compensation. In such a world, the argument continues. The traditional economy breaks down. If machines produce everything and humans produce nothing, then wages are zero. And if wages are zero, nobody can buy anything. The system collapses unless you create a new mechanism for distributing what the machines produce. A universal basic income is one answer. Universal high income, as Musk phrases it, is another. One where the sheer volume of machine output is so vast that every human can live not just adequately, but lavishly. And if abundance becomes total, money itself becomes pointless. Why would you charge someone for something that costs nothing to produce? It is a seductive vision, and it is not entirely without foundation. The marginal cost of digital goods has already approached zero. Copying a piece of software, a song, an ebook, or a movie costs essentially nothing. AI is extending this zero marginal cost logic into new domains. The cost of generating a custom image, writing a legal brief, producing a song, or drafting a business plan is collapsing. If the same dynamic eventually applies to physical goods, through the combination of robotic manufacturing, AI logistics, and abundant energy, then something genuinely unprecedented becomes thinkable. But there are powerful reasons for skepticism, and they deserve to be taken seriously. The first is that even if AI and robots can produce vast quantities of goods cheaply, some things remain fundamentally scarce. Land is scarce. Beachfront property cannot be replicated. Housing in desirable locations cannot be manufactured in unlimited quantities. Natural resources, while potentially more efficiently extracted by machines, are still finite. Water, rare earth minerals, arable land, spectrum bandwidth, and physical space all have hard limits. A recent academic paper examined this problem rigorously, arguing that even when AI delivers what the author called technological abundance, meaning cost compression and capability expansion, it does not eliminate scarcity, it reorganizes it. The constraints shift from labor to resources, from production to access, from capability to governance. Ownership and control become even more important when machines do the work, because whoever owns the machines captures the gains. This points to what may be the most important challenge of all. In a world where AI and robots produce everything, who owns the AI and the robots? If ownership is concentrated, as it currently is, in the hands of a relatively small number of corporations and their shareholders, then abundance does not automatically benefit everyone. It benefits the owners. The rest of the population, displaced from productive work and lacking claims on the machine-generated output, could find themselves worse off, not better. This is not a hypothetical concern. It is the direction things are already heading. The gap between those who own and deploy AI and those who are displaced by it is widening. Stock markets are soaring because AI is boosting corporate profits, but wages for many workers are stagnant or declining. The gains are accruing to capital, not labor. And without deliberate policy intervention, there is no mechanism to ensure they are shared. Musk himself acknowledged this in a more sober moment, noting that even in a future of near-infinite AI labor, real constraints remain. Mass, electricity, and power distribution. Someone has to build the power plants and maintain the battery grids and mine the materials. Political economist Samuel Solomon stressed that even if robots solve physical scarcity, political scarcity remains. Who gets the scarce goods? Who lives in the desirable locations? Who has access to the best healthcare and education? These are political questions, not technological ones, and technology alone cannot answer them. The economist John Maynard Keynes made a famous prediction in 1930. He estimated that by 2030, technology would create such abundance that the main challenge facing humanity would be how to use all its leisure time. We are now just 4 years from that date, and his prediction looks wildly wrong. Rather than an age of abundance, we have an age of inequality. Productivity has risen enormously since 1930, but the gains have not been evenly distributed. A relatively few have become extraordinarily wealthy. A vast number are barely making it. Technology creates abundance. But abundance, without the right institutions to distribute it, creates a two-tiered society. This is the essential lesson of economic history, and it applies directly to the AI revolution. The question is not whether AI can create abundance. It almost certainly can. The question is whether we will create the institutions, the policies, the social contracts, the political will, to ensure that abundance is shared. And the answer to that question is not determined by algorithms or training runs or GPU clusters. It is determined by human choices, made through human politics, in human communities, by human beings who still have the power to shape what comes next. There is a thought experiment that helps clarify the stakes. Imagine a small box, a modern-day Aladdin's lamp. You tell it what you want, and it appears. Food, clothing, shelter, entertainment, medicine, anything. It sounds wonderful until you realize the implication. If the box makes everything, then nobody has a job because the box does all the work. And if nobody has a job, nobody has income. And if nobody has income, nobody can buy anything. The box can produce an infinite supply, but there is no demand because there is no money. This is not just a thought experiment. It is a simplified version of the real challenge that AI poses to economic systems based on market exchange. Markets work by matching supply with demand through the mechanism of prices. But prices presume buyers, and buyers presume income, and income presumes employment. Remove employment from the equation, and the entire system needs to be rebuilt on different foundations. Some thinkers see this as an opportunity rather than a crisis. The anthropologist David Graeber, in his influential work on what he called meaningless jobs, argued that a large portion of modern employment is already socially useless, maintained only to preserve political stability and social norms. People spend their lives performing tasks that even they privately acknowledge serve no genuine purpose. In Graeber's view, a world where AI handles the necessary work would free humans to pursue genuinely meaningful activities: art, community, caretaking, exploration, spiritual practice, and the cultivation of relationships. Others take a more cautious view, noting that purpose does not automatically emerge when obligation disappears. People who win the lottery often report being less happy, not more. Retirees sometimes struggle with a loss of identity and structure. Freedom from work is not the same as freedom to flourish, and the latter requires intention, support, and the cultivation of capacities that our current educational and social systems do not adequately develop. The path forward is not a straight line toward either utopia or disaster. It is a winding road with many possible destinations, and we are choosing our direction with every investment decision, every policy debate, every election, and every conversation about what kind of society we want to live in. The machines do not care. They will do whatever they are built and trained to do. The question of whether that serves humanity broadly or serves a narrow elite is not a technical question. It is the most human question there is, the fork in the road. What kind of future will we choose? We have covered a lot of ground tonight. We have watched AI agents take over office work. We have seen humanoid robots enter factories and warehouses. We have followed AI into hospitals and classrooms and onto the highways. We have traced the invisible lines of electricity that power this entire revolution and felt the strain on the grid. We have examined what happens when work disappears and asked whether money itself might follow. So let us attempt something difficult. Let us try to see the road ahead with clear eyes, without the utopian fantasy that everything will be wonderful, or the dystopian terror that everything will be terrible, but with a sober assessment of what is likely, what is possible, and what is up to us. Here is what seems most likely in the near term, within the next 3 to 5 years. AI agents will continue to improve rapidly. The length of tasks they can handle will continue to double every several months. By 2028 or 2029, AI systems will be capable of performing the large majority of cognitive work currently done by humans at lower cost and higher speed. This does not mean all white-collar jobs will disappear overnight, because organizations are slow to change. Regulations create friction, and some tasks require physical presence or human relationships. But the trend is unmistakable, and the pressure on the labor market will intensify significantly. Humanoid robots will move from pilot deployments to small-scale commercial operations. By 2027 or 2028, thousands of units will be deployed in automotive manufacturing, logistics, and warehousing. Consumer-level models will begin appearing by the late 2020s, though they will initially be expensive and limited in capability. The real transformation of physical labor will unfold over the 2030s as costs drop and capabilities improve. The energy demands of AI will continue to grow, creating political and economic tensions. Electricity prices will rise in many regions. Conflicts between data center development and local communities will intensify. There will be a massive build-out of renewable energy and a resurgence of interest in nuclear power. But the expansion of energy supply will lag behind the growth of demand for at least several years. Autonomous vehicles will expand from limited commercial operations to broader deployment. By 2030, robotaxis will be available in dozens of cities worldwide. Autonomous trucking will be commercially viable on defined highway routes. Consumer vehicles will offer increasingly capable driver assistance features, with Level 3 systems becoming more common on premium vehicles. Full Level 5 autonomy, however, will remain elusive. Now, here is what seems possible but uncertain. The outcomes that depend heavily on choices made by policymakers, business leaders, and societies. A universal basic income or some form of guaranteed income may be adopted in several countries. The political pressure will grow as unemployment rises in certain sectors and demographics. Pilot programs will multiply. Funding mechanisms like automation taxes and equity funds will be debated. But implementation at a national scale in major economies will face fierce political resistance and will require compromises that satisfy neither advocates nor opponents. The distribution of AI's gains will be the defining political question of the era. If current trends continue, the wealth generated by AI will concentrate among a shrinking number of technology companies and their investors. Inequality will widen. Social tensions will rise. But if governments act decisively through progressive taxation, public investment, regulatory frameworks that promote broad access to AI tools, and support for displaced workers, then it is possible, not guaranteed but possible, to steer the transition toward a more equitable outcome. The geopolitical dimensions of this transformation deserve attention as well. The AI race is not just a corporate competition. It is a contest between nations. The United States and China are the dominant players, with Europe, India, and other regions working to establish their own capabilities. Chinese AI firms have embraced open-source development strategies that are earning them goodwill in the global AI community and building long-term advantages. The lag between Chinese AI releases and the Western frontier has been shrinking from months to weeks. Export controls on advanced chips have slowed China's progress in some areas, but have also spurred domestic innovation and self-sufficiency. This competition raises profound questions about governance, values, and power. AI systems are not value neutral. They embed the priorities, assumptions, and biases of their creators. An AI system designed in a democratic society with strong privacy protections will behave differently from one designed under an authoritarian regime with pervasive surveillance. The question of which values are encoded in the world's most powerful AI systems is not merely technical. It is a question about what kind of civilization we are building. The nature of work itself will evolve. New categories of employment will emerge, just as they always have after major technological disruptions. But they may look very different from what we are used to. Roles centered on human relationships, caregiving, mentorship, community building, creative expression, and ethical oversight of AI systems will likely grow. The challenge will be ensuring that these roles are valued, both financially and culturally, at a level that allows people to build dignified lives. There will also be a growing need for what might be called AI translators, people who understand both the technology and the human contexts in which it is deployed. Organizations will need people who can bridge the gap between what AI systems can do and what businesses, communities, and individuals actually need. This is not a purely technical role. It requires empathy, communication skills, ethical judgment, and a deep understanding of the specific domain in question. Whether that is healthcare, education, law, manufacturing, or any other field, these hybrid roles, combining human insight with technological fluency, may become some of the most valuable and sought-after positions in the new economy. And here is the deeper question, the one that transcends economics and politics and touches something more fundamental about what it means to be human. If AI can do everything we do and do it better, faster, and cheaper, what is left for us? This question can feel paralyzing, but it also contains the seeds of something liberating, because the things that make life worth living, love, friendship, creativity, curiosity, humor, beauty, the satisfaction of learning something new, the joy of sharing a meal with someone you care about, the thrill of a sunset, or a symphony, or a story well told. None of these things are produced by economic efficiency. None of them requires us to be productive. None of them is diminished by the existence of a machine that can write a legal brief faster than we can. The risk is that we let the transition happen to us rather than shaping it ourselves, that we drift into a future designed by whoever builds the most powerful systems, rather than one designed by the people who have to live in it. The risk is passivity, the assumption that technology is a force of nature rather than a set of human choices. But we are not passive. We never have been. Every major technological transition in human history, from agriculture to industrialization to the digital revolution, was shaped by human decisions, by laws and institutions, by movements and struggles, by arguments and compromises and acts of imagination. The AI revolution will be no different. The story of what comes next is not written in code. It is written by us, by the policies we demand, by the businesses we support. Through the conversations we have with our families, neighbors, and elected representatives. By the values we insist on, even when they are inconvenient, even when they slow things down, even when the algorithm says there is a more efficient way. And here, at the end of this long journey, is perhaps the most important thing to remember. We are not the last generation. We are the pivotal one. The generation that stands at the fork in the road, with the power to choose which path humanity takes. One path leads toward a future where AI's extraordinary capabilities lift all of humanity, where abundance is shared, where work becomes optional rather than mandatory, where people are free to pursue meaning and connection and discovery on their own terms. The other path leads toward a future where the gains are captured by a few and the costs are borne by many, where the machines serve their owners rather than humanity, where ordinary people become spectators in an economy that no longer needs them. Both futures are possible. Neither is inevitable. And the choices that determine which one we build are being made right now in corporate boardrooms and government offices and university labs and living rooms, and in conversations like this one, happening between you and a voice on a screen on a quiet evening in 2026. Let us be specific about what individuals can do in this moment of transition. If you are working in a field that AI is beginning to penetrate, and that is most fields at this point, the worst thing you can do is ignore it. The people who will thrive in the AI era are not necessarily the most technically skilled. They are the most adaptable. Learn how to use AI tools. Experiment with them. Understand their strengths and their limitations. Develop the skills that AI cannot easily replicate. Complex interpersonal communication, ethical judgment, creative synthesis, emotional intelligence, and the ability to frame problems in ways that machines cannot. If you have children, talk to them about this. Not to frighten them, but to prepare them. The world they are entering will require different capabilities than the one you grew up in. Critical thinking, the ability to evaluate information from multiple sources and form independent judgments, will be more important than memorization. The ability to work with AI systems, to direct them, evaluate their output, and know when to trust them and when to override them will be a core professional competency. If you are a voter, pay attention to how your representatives are addressing these issues. AI policy will be one of the most consequential areas of governance in the coming years. Questions about regulation, taxation, labor protections, educational investment, and the distribution of technological gains will shape the lives of millions. Demand that your leaders engage with these questions seriously, rather than defaulting to either uncritical enthusiasm or reflexive fear. And if you are simply a human being, living your life, trying to make sense of a world that seems to be changing faster than you can keep up with, take a breath. Remember that you are not powerless. Remember that every great transformation in human history was navigated by ordinary people who found ways to adapt, to organize, to care for each other, and to insist on their dignity and their worth. Remember that the machines we are building are tools, extraordinarily powerful tools, but tools nonetheless. They do not have values. They do not have purposes. They do not dream of a better future. Only we do that. The future is not something that happens to you. It is something you create. And the time to start creating it is tonight. You have been watching. If you found this valuable, if it made you think, if it gave you something to discuss with the people in your life, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling us what you think. Where do you see all of this heading? Are you optimistic? Are you concerned? What changes have you already noticed in your own life in your own work, in the conversations you are having with your friends and your family. We want to hear from you. This conversation does not end when the video stops. It continues in the comments, in your living rooms, in your communities. The more people who engage with these questions now, the better prepared we will all be for what comes next. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. Stay curious, stay informed, stay human. The future needs you.